Hello, it's Family Driver. Welcome to another video and welcome to another review of BMW 3 Series. So after reviewing BMW 340 xDrive and 330e previously, now I'm in 330i, which is a 2-litre rear-wheel drive petrol version of 3 Series. It will be really interesting to see how this car compares to the other two. So this car should be much lighter because it doesn't have any hybrid, it doesn't have a 4-wheel drive, therefore it should feel different in the corners as well. So I'm really intrigued how this will compare to the other two cars I already reviewed. So without further ado, let's go for a drive. So we've got the standard digital screen at the front of the driver and the infotainment system. We don't have any fancy speakers, and that's obviously because now you can't order them because of the chip shortage. BMW actually pulled out from supplying them to all models. You can only have them on your 340M and M models. You can't have them on the 320s, 330s, etc. So let's go for a drive. So the first thing you're going to realize is that the car is very comfortable and very quiet. Obviously it's a petrol engine, so you wouldn't expect it will be loud, but yeah, it feels really refined. As standard, you have different modes to choose from. This one has Adaptive, Eco, Pro, Comfort and Sport. So cruising in Eco Pro, it's very smooth. Sometimes you feel where the gear change happens, but most of the time is seamless and you can't feel any difference between the gears. The car obviously indicates when it's trying to turn off the engine. It will try to coast as well to save as much fuel as possible. The whole dash changes to this blue theme, suggesting that you are saving petrol. The suspension on a rough road like this one feels very comfortable. I would say compared to 330e and 340, it feels a bit more compliant. I would say it's not as stiff. Obviously the other cars much heavier. I think they were differently sprung than this one. This one feels like it's a bit more on a comfy side than the other two, which makes sense. So in terms of the digital dash, it's a typical digital cluster, as in any other 3 Series. You've got your speed on the left, and you, depending on the mode, you have either Eco Pro functions on the right hand side showing you how much fuel you're saving, etc. Or if you switch to Comfort, it changes to some kind of indication of how much power do you use. Or when you get to Sport, it actually starts indicating your actual revs. Obviously, as you can see, with each mode you get a slightly different layout. The color changes, which also indicates the mode you're in, which is nice, but again, I'm still not a huge fan of it. What I find quite annoying is this car is trying to keep me within my lane, and it does it in a very intrusive way. So in my M2, for example, it will start vibrating the steering wheel without actually changing direction I drive in. With this one, it will actually pull your steering wheel in a quite aggressive manner, which maybe you can get used to, but for now I'm definitely not a fan. So let's switch back into Eco Pro because we're cruising in the traffic, so we don't need to waste fuel. And again, the car is smooth, From the first to the second gear, I felt the gear change. Now I don't. It's really smooth, which is great. That's what you want on your daily commute when you're trying to save money rather than have fun. In terms of the screen over here, obviously it's a touch screen. I think it looks absolutely beautiful. BMW absolutely nailed this part of the cockpit in a G series. It looks beautiful. The aircon controls are also very clear, and I think they just work absolutely fine. The console here, I'm not the biggest fan of this silver material, which is metal-like. I prefer carbon fiber or something else, but it works. That central tunnel is quite wide, giving you an impression of this car being quite big and spacious. So in that respect, I think it works really well. In terms of the fuel economy, I think it's absolutely fine. On my daily commute this morning, the car returned 44 mpg in a mixed cycle. There was some traffic in it, some heavy traffic in it, and some driving outside town as well. My M2 in that kind of scenario would return about 30-31 mpg, so this one is quite respectable. As you can hear or not, I'm driving 30 miles per hour and the car is very quiet. It is very quiet. I think the tire noise is really well separated from the cabin in G series, and in terms of the engine noise in Eco Pro, it stays almost silent. If I change to comfort, it doesn't really change. It's still very comfortable. Sport mode, you can suddenly hear the engine, and obviously majority of that sound will be synthetic, will be through your speakers. So the car feels really comfortable. We're driving on quite uneven surface, and really I don't feel it. It deals with it really well. There is just a little bit of movement, but other than that, it feels really comfy. In terms of the seats, I have the same complaint I had before in a 330e. So these are the manual seats, and the seating actually feels not as comfortable as I would like it to be. I can definitely feel under my bottom the stitching. It almost feels like there's not enough padding under my bum, and you can actually feel it all the time, which to me it's a fail. I would expect these seats to be more comfortable in that terms. Otherwise they hold you well, and the sitting position is great. It's just that padding in your seat, which to me it just doesn't work. It's not comfortable. So let's test the dynamics of this car. So the section of the road I'm gonna be on in a moment, it's a section of the longer corners, which will allow me to carry some speed and get feel how the suspension deals with them. The car stays absolutely flat through the corners. I can't feel any body roll. It also hides the speed really well. I felt exactly the same in the 340i. It must be a G series characteristic, really, hiding the real speed, which can be dangerous. I have to say, the chassis of the G series amazes me all the time. Every time I'm in 3 Series, it just amazes me how well it feels on the road. There is a slight delay with the downshifts because obviously it's a ZF gearbox, it's not DCT, but I still would say they are quick enough. Click. So there is a delay there. It feels a bit weak at the top, so when you get to 6,000 RPMs, it actually dies down rather than feeling punchy at the end. Obviously this engine is set up to be torquey at the bottom and in the mid-range rather than the top, but let's stop and try to launch this car. I would say there isn't a lot of drama in the first 2 gears. You would expect the car would pull slightly more, but maybe it's just me, you know, I daily drive a 3-litre car, so it has far more torque. Let's go to manual. 1, 2, 3. Don't get me wrong, the car isn't slow, it's just probably not as fast as I would expect it to be. So the car feels really torquey in a mid-range, especially I would say 4,000 to 5,000. But I think after 5,000 it starts dying down, which isn't great. I think there's not much point sitting above 5,000 RPMs because it just doesn't feel strong in that rev range. In terms of the engine sound, it is very synthetic. It's unfortunately it's all pumped through the speakers. There isn't much real engine noise in a cabin, and obviously that's because of the particulate filters. That's because people want cars to be quiet and comfortable, and you can't really have both unless you tunnel the sound somehow to the car, but you wouldn't do it unless it's a sports car. Now this road, it's really bumpy, it's horrendous, but it's a good test to a suspension. God, the car feels really grippy. It deals beautifully, seamlessly with all the bumps. Once you're in the rev range, you know, the torque is there, it feels punchy. You push it and it reacts straight away. Yeah, it's the 4,000 when it really kicks in. Holds on the road really well. Yes, the chassis of the G Series, it's fantastic. It gives so much confidence in the corners. Honestly, I I will be praising it every time I'm in this car. I think this is a massive leap over the F-Series. Fantastic. It just feels so good. The car feels, I would say, much smaller. The car feels more like a smaller sporty car compared to the other saloons of this size I drove in the past. And that was i4. So driving dynamics are another big advantage of this car. Maybe the engine isn't the best, maybe it's not as torquey as I would like it to be at the top end, but in the end it's not the most hardcore version of this car. You've got 340 on top of this one, and then obviously you've got M3 as well. So this probably is orientated towards people who don't want the cheapest 320. They want something more, but they still want this car to be economical. They still want it to be a car they can take for a long journey, which will be comfortable, and really that's what it is. Let's analyze where this car sits in BMW 3 Series range. So below this car you have your entry-level 320, which obviously it's just a less powerful version of the car with the same engine. Then you've got 330i, so the car which has a bit more power, so it will be slightly more fun on the road, but still economical, still quiet. So just a better version of your base 320i. On top of this model you will have your 340i X-Drive, which is much faster car, much more exciting car, but obviously it will bring the penalties of the higher run costs. It's a 3-liter engine, it will take much more fuel, it's much heavier car as well, so it's this one sits very happily in the middle of that range. And I'm not bringing diesels into this discussion. I think people who likes diesels, they buy them for a different reasons, very often business use, you know, long journeys. So let's leave diesels out of this discussion. So I think this one, being in the middle, you know, it works well. It's dynamic as a daily car. It's not a very exciting in terms of acceleration, but it is still very exciting to drive. In terms of handling, fantastic. G series I'm absolute fan of. You know, if you want to go on a bendy road from time to time and have a bit of fun, feel like you're a racing driver, you know, this car really can deliver a bit of that. You know, it feels really great in the bends, it stays flat, it gives you that impression of much sportier car than it really is. And you know, you can do all of that with your family at the back. Just make sure that they had some pills for the travel sickness if you're doing it with them on board. Let me know in the comments, what do you think about this review? What do you think about this car? Maybe you own one. How do you feel about it long term? But for now, thank you very much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this review. Please let me know in comments if you did, or if there's anything I should improve in my future reviews. But for now, thank you very much for watching. Give this video a like, subscribe to my channel if you're new, and I'll see you shortly in the next one. Goodbye, do widzenia.